It was the kind of Tinder match that felt like fate. Her name was Amanda, and she had an earthy, carefree vibe that stood out from the usual endless selfies and bikini shots. Her photos showed her in natural settings, a sunflower field, a rustic barn, and one where she was holding a basket of apples, her smile radiant against the backdrop of a golden orchard. Her bio was simple but inviting: lover of the outdoors, fresh air, and deep conversations. Looking for someone who's not afraid to go off the beaten path. We started chatting, and I was instantly drawn in. She was warm, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say. Her messages felt personal, not the canned small talk I was used to. After a week of texting, she suggested meeting up. "Why don't you come out to my place?" she wrote. "It's a bit of a drive, but the scenery is worth it. I can cook, and we'll have the whole place to ourselves." At first, I hesitated. Meeting someone for the first time at their house, especially somewhere remote, felt risky. But Amanda had this disarming way about her, like she'd seen the hesitation coming. "Totally understand if it feels weird," she added. "I promise I'm not a serial killer, just a girl who lives too far from decent coffee shops." She sent a few pictures of the farmhouse, a cozy-looking, whitewashed place surrounded by open fields and rolling hills. It looked like a dream, the kind of serene escape I didn't even know I needed. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The drive to Amanda's house was beautiful, just as she'd promised. The highway gave way to winding backroads, the scenery shifting to sprawling farmland and dense patches of forest. As I got closer, the houses grew farther apart, the fields wider and wilder. My GPS signaled I was only a few miles away when it lost connection entirely. I followed Amanda's directions, turning onto a narrow gravel road that cut through a grove of towering oak trees. Finally, I saw it, the farmhouse. The house looked just like the photos, charming and rustic, with a wraparound porch and a wind chime tinkling softly in the breeze. Amanda was waiting outside, waving as I pulled into the dirt driveway. She was even prettier in person. Her long, chestnut hair was pulled back in a loose braid, and she wore a flowy sundress that swayed in the wind. "You made it," she said, grinning as I stepped out of the car. "Wow, this place is incredible," I said, taking in the view. The open field stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with wildflowers and swaying grass. "Thanks," she said. "It's been in my family for generations. I grew up here." Amanda led me inside, where the interior was just as charming as the exterior. The walls were lined with family photos and shelves of old books, and the air smelled faintly of lavender and wood smoke. She prepared a spread of homemade dishes, roasted vegetables, fresh-baked bread, and a hearty stew that she claimed was her grandmother's recipe. We ate on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon as we sipped on wine and talked about everything from childhood memories to our favorite places to travel. For a while, it felt perfect, but as the evening wore on, little things began to feel off. Amanda's mood seemed to shift, her cheerfulness giving way to moments of silence where she'd stare out at the fields, her expression unreadable. "Everything okay?" I asked. She snapped out of it, smiling quickly. "Yes, sorry. Just tired. It's been a long week." I didn't push her, but the unease lingered. As darkness fell, Amanda suggested we move inside. "The mosquitoes can get brutal out here," she said, leading me into the living room. The house felt different at night, darker, quieter, and somehow colder. The cozy charm was replaced with an eerie stillness, broken only by the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. Amanda excused herself to grab something from the kitchen, leaving me alone in the living room. That's when I noticed the locked door. It was at the end of the hallway, an old wooden door with a large padlock hanging from the latch. The rest of the house had an open, welcoming feel, but this door seemed out of place, like it was meant to keep something in. Curiosity got the better of me. I walked over, running my fingers along the rough wood. The lock was heavy and rusted, the kind you'd see on a barn or storage shed. "Don't," Amanda's voice startled me, and I spun around to see her standing behind me, her expression tense. "Sorry," I said quickly. "I was just curious." She shook her head, forcing a smile. "It's nothing, just an old storage room." The rest of the night felt strained. Amanda seemed distracted, her laughter forced, and her eyes frequently darted toward the hallway. I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself I was overthinking things. But when it came time to leave, she stopped me. "It's late," she said, her voice quiet. "You should stay the night. Driving these roads in the dark isn't safe." I hesitated. The idea of staying suddenly felt wrong, but the thought of navigating those pitch-black roads didn't seem much better. Reluctantly, I agreed. Amanda showed me to a small guest room on the second floor. The bed was comfortable, and the view of the moonlit field should have been soothing, but I couldn't relax. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with unease. Then I heard it, a faint scratching sound, coming from somewhere below. At first, I thought it was an animal, maybe a raccoon or a stray cat, but the sound grew louder, more deliberate, like nails dragging against wood. I sat up, straining to hear. The scratching was coming from the locked door. My pulse quickened as I tiptoed out of the room, careful not to make a sound. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the moon filtering through a small window. As I approached the door, the scratching stopped. I stood there, heart pounding, when suddenly a voice whispered from the other side. "Let me out," it said, soft and trembling. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice shaking. The voice didn't answer. Instead, the scratching resumed, more frantic now, like whatever was inside was desperate to escape. Amanda appeared at the end of the hallway, her face pale and her eyes wide with anger. "What are you doing?" she hissed, rushing toward me. "There's someone in there," I stammered. "No," she snapped, grabbing my arm. "You need to leave. Now." She practically dragged me to the front door, shoving my bag into my hands. "Go," she said, her voice shaking. I didn't argue. I ran to my car, my heart racing as I sped down the gravel road. In the rearview mirror, I saw Amanda standing on the porch, watching me leave. When I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about the voice behind the door. I tried looking up Amanda online, but her Tinder profile was gone, and the address she'd given me didn't appear on any maps. I'll never know who or what was locked in that room, but sometimes, late at night, I hear scratching at my own door, and I wonder if I should have opened hers. I swore I'd never download Tinder. I was one of those people who mocked it from the sidelines, convinced it was just a playground for shallow hookups and awkward one-liners. But after a string of failed relationships and a long stretch of loneliness, curiosity got the better of me. It wasn't long before I matched with someone who seemed perfect. Her name was Elise. Her photos were casual but charming. One of her smiling on a hiking trail, another of her curled up on a couch with a book. Her bio said she loved Thai food, classic rock, and horror movies. My kind of woman. When she messaged me first, I was hooked. Her first message was playful. "So, what's your go-to scary movie?" We ended up chatting for hours, diving into everything from our favorite bands to the weirdest foods we'd ever tried. Elise was funny, sharp, and engaging. Way too good for someone like me, I thought. After a few days of nonstop conversation, she suggested meeting up. "There's this amazing little wine bar downtown," she said. "Let's meet there Thursday night." I was nervous but excited. Everything about Elise seemed effortless, and for the first time in ages, I felt like I had a real shot at something meaningful. When Thursday rolled around, I spent far too long picking out an outfit and psyching myself up. I arrived at the wine bar a few minutes early, the soft glow of fairy lights and the hum of conversation making the place feel warm and inviting. Elise hadn't arrived yet, so I grabbed a table near the window and ordered a drink. Minutes turned into half an hour, and my nerves started to creep in. I texted her, "Hey, just checking, are you on your way?" She didn't reply. Another 15 minutes passed, and just as I was about to call it a night, my phone buzzed. "Sorry, running late. Be there soon." Relieved, I settled back into my chair and ordered another drink. But as I sipped, I noticed something strange. Across the bar, a woman was staring at me. She was sitting alone, her long dark hair partially obscuring her face. Her expression was unreadable, her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made me shiver. I offered a polite smile, but she didn't react. After a few minutes, I couldn't take it anymore. I got up and approached her table. "Hi," I said awkwardly. "Is everything okay?" She tilted her head slightly, her lips curving into the faintest smile. "You're waiting for Elise," she said. The words sent a chill down my spine. "How do you know that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stood up and walked past me, her shoulder brushing mine as she whispered, "She's not coming." I turned to follow her, but she was already gone, disappearing into the crowd. My heart pounded as I returned to my table, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Another text from Elise popped up on my phone. "Almost there. Don't leave." Something about the message felt wrong. The punctuation was perfect, the tone just slightly off. It didn't match the casual, easy way she'd texted before, but I ignored the feeling and waited. When she finally arrived, I barely recognized her. Her photos hadn't done her justice. Elise was stunning in person, her smile lighting up the dimly lit bar. But as she sat down, I couldn't shake the unease crawling up my spine. "I'm so sorry I'm late," she said, her voice warm and melodic. "I got caught up with work." I nodded, trying to push the strange encounter with the woman out of my mind. We fell into conversation, just like we had online, but something was off. Elise was perfect, too perfect. Her laugh came at all the right moments, her responses were thoughtful, and she seemed genuinely interested in everything I said. But there was a hollowness behind her eyes, like she was playing a part. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "It's so nice to finally meet you in person," she said, her smile unwavering. "You look just like your photos." Almost exactly. The way she emphasized almost sent a chill down my spine. I tried to laugh it off. "Well, I hope that's a good thing," I said. Her expression didn't change. "It's perfect," she replied, her voice almost too soft to hear. The rest of the date passed in a blur of forced smiles and uneasy laughter. When it was over, Elise insisted on walking me to my car. As we reached the parking lot, she turned to me, her smile fading. "I had a great time," she said, "but I need to tell you something." I waited, my stomach twisting with anxiety. Before she could speak, my phone buzzed. I glanced down and saw a text from her number. "You're not safe. Leave now." My head snapped up, but Elise was gone. The parking lot was empty, the sound of distant traffic the only noise. I raced to my car, locking the doors and starting the engine. As I pulled out of the lot, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. A figure stood at the edge of the lot, illuminated by a flickering streetlight. It wasn't Elise. It was the woman from the bar. She smiled, raising a hand in a slow wave. When I got home, I deleted Tinder and blocked Elise's number. But the texts didn't stop. Every night, I received the same message from an unknown number. Almost exactly. To this day, I don't know who or what Elise really was. But sometimes, when I catch my reflection in the mirror, I feel like someone is staring back, and they're not me. I wasn't new to Tinder when this happened, but I wish I'd never swiped right on him. His name was Nathan, and at first, he seemed like the kind of guy everyone hopes to meet on a dating app. His bio was funny and self-deprecating. Professional overthinker, amateur chef, and lover of all things spooky. His pictures showed a tall, dark-haired guy with kind eyes and a smile that seemed genuine. One photo had him hiking, another with a dog, and one holding a cup of coffee in a sunlit kitchen. We matched on a Thursday afternoon, and within minutes, he messaged me, "So, do you like overthinkers, or is that a deal breaker?" I laughed and responded, and from there, our conversation flowed effortlessly. He was charming, quick-witted, and attentive. He even remembered small details about things I mentioned. By the weekend, he suggested meeting up. Nathan offered to cook dinner for me at his place. I hesitated. Meeting someone at their home on the first date wasn't my usual thing, but he had a way of making me feel at ease. "I know it's unconventional," he said, "but I make a mean lasagna, and I'd love to show off my cooking skills." Against my better judgment, I agreed. He sent me his address, a cozy-looking apartment building on the edge of the city. The idea of a home-cooked meal sounded intimate and sweet, and I convinced myself it would be a nice change from the usual awkward coffee shop meetups. The night of the date, I arrived at his place a little nervous but excited. His building was older, with ivy creeping up the brick facade and a dimly lit staircase leading to his apartment on the second floor. Nathan greeted me at the door with that same warm smile I'd seen in his photos. "Welcome," he said, stepping aside to let me in. His apartment was small but tidy, with an eclectic mix of vintage furniture and modern decor. Candles flickered on the dining table, and the smell of garlic and herbs filled the air. "It smells amazing in here," I said, feeling my nerves ease. He grinned. "Told you I could cook. Wine." The first hour was perfect. We ate, laughed, and bonded over our shared love of horror movies. Nathan was just as charming in person as he'd been online, and I started to think maybe this could turn into something real. But then, things took a turn. After dinner, he offered to show me the rest of the apartment. "This place has some weird quirks," he said, leading me down the narrow hallway. He showed me the small bedroom, the cluttered office, and finally, a door at the end of the hall. "This," he said, placing a hand on the doorknob, "is the locked room." I raised an eyebrow. "Locked?" He nodded, his smile fading slightly. "It's an old storage room. The landlord said it's been sealed off for years. Something about structural issues. I just leave it alone." His tone was casual, but there was something in his eyes, an unease that didn't match the nonchalant way he spoke. "Have you ever tried to open it?" I asked. "No," he said quickly. "It's just an empty room. Nothing worth seeing." The conversation shifted after that, but the locked door lingered in my mind. Something about it felt off. We moved back to the living room, where Nathan poured us more wine and put on some music. But as the night went on, I started to notice little things that didn't add up, like the way he kept glancing toward the hallway, or the faint, rhythmic sound I thought I heard, like tapping, coming from somewhere behind the locked door. At one point, I excused myself to use the bathroom. On the way back, I stopped in the hallway, staring at the door. The tapping was louder now, unmistakable. It wasn't frantic, but steady, deliberate. I leaned in, pressing my ear to the wood. "Hello?" I whispered, half expecting to hear nothing. But then came the voice. It was faint, muffled by the thick door, but I heard it. A woman's voice, soft and pleading. "Help me." I stumbled back, my heart racing. "Everything okay?" Nathan's voice startled me, and I spun around to see him standing at the other end of the hall, his expression unreadable. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just got a little turned around." Back in the living room, I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting back to the door and the voice. Nathan noticed my distraction, his charming demeanor faltering. "You seem tense," he said, tilting his head. I forced a laugh. "Just tired, I guess. Long day at work." His eyes lingered on me for a moment before he nodded. "Maybe I should call you a cab?" I agreed, eager to leave. As I grabbed my bag, Nathan walked me to the door, his hand brushing lightly against my back. "This was fun," he said, smiling. "We should do it again soon." "Yeah," I said, my voice shaky. "Definitely." But as I stepped out into the hallway, I heard it again. The tapping, faint but insistent. "Good night," Nathan said, his voice firm. The door clicked shut behind me. When I got home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I replayed the night over and over in my mind, questioning what I'd heard. I decided to look him up, digging through social media and online records. That's when I found it. A news article from 3 years ago. "Missing woman last seen near city center." The photo showed a young woman with dark hair and kind eyes. She looked exactly like me. My blood ran cold as I scrolled through the article. The woman, named Rachel, had disappeared after meeting a man she'd matched with on Tinder. His name wasn't mentioned, but the details were eerily similar to my own experience. I reported everything to the police, but they said they couldn't act on it without concrete evidence. Still, I couldn't let it go. A week later, I went back to his apartment building, this time with a friend. We waited until nightfall, watching from a distance as Nathan came and went. When we were sure he wasn't home, we snuck inside. The hallway was just as I remembered, the locked door looming at the end. Using a crowbar, my friend pried it open. Inside was a nightmare. The room was small and dark, the walls lined with soundproofing foam. Chains hung from the ceiling, and a faint, metallic smell filled the air. In the corner, we found a pile of belongings, clothes, jewelry, and a diary with the name Rachel scrawled inside. But there was no sign of her. We called the police, and Nathan was arrested later that night. During the investigation, they found evidence linking him to multiple disappearances. The women were never found, but their belongings were hidden throughout his apartment. To this day, I can't walk past a locked door without feeling sick, and I'll never touch Tinder again.